everyone, and welcome to your 18th week of creative writing. I am your teacher, Hayleigh Worgan. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a very brief lesson for you. No assignment at the end of this lesson, but I think you will enjoy it. It is about the book, The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. And it's actually really good if you guys haven't read it. Looks a little long, right? But it's actually a pretty quick read, and I think you would very much benefit from it as writers, and I'm going to explain why. So this semester, we've put together this really large writing project, right? And if you look back over your previous work, you can see something starting to develop, and it's kind of a commentary on something outside of yourself. And what I mean by that is sometimes as writers, it's really hard for us to write about things that we don't know. So you might find yourself constantly writing about your own life, and that is not a problem at all. You definitely should write down the things that you are experiencing because it can help you create characters later on as far as like experiences you have, can help you relate to your characters. However, we have to be careful with that, right? Because eventually you're going to, first of all, run out of things to write about. And secondly, it can begin to look like your stories are all focused on one point of view, which if you're always writing about yourself, they are, right? So this semester, you guys were able to develop a totally different character based on a simple image. You used experiences from your own lives, some of you did, to tap into the emotions that the character may have been feeling in that image. And whether you understood it or not, this was the very beginning of what could be a larger body of work for you. So even if these characters do not become main characters in your work, you can use them to develop your main characters because they exist with backstories of their own. So you don't have to use them as main characters in your work, guys, but you could eventually use them as characters to kind of background characters to highlight your main character that you develop. So here's the thing about background characters. In a novel, some of the most important characters are those in the background. They exist to remind you that your main character can change. He, she, they can be impacted by the events in the world around them and the relationships they form with other people, just as much as you or I can be impacted by our surroundings. So in The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, the narrator and the background characters serve to help us understand how Liesl grows and changes significantly from the time her mother drops her off to live with her foster parents to the bombing of the street where she lives, and eventually to her death as an elderly woman. Now, without well-developed background characters, we would be left wondering many things, okay? And I want to share an example with you from The Book Thief to highlight what can go missing from your story if you don't have well-developed background characters. So I'm going to go to page 108 and read just a small selection for you here. People lined the streets as the youth of Germany marched toward the town hall and the square. On quite a few occasions, Liesl forgot about her mother and any other problem of which she currently held ownership. There was a swell in her chest as the people clapped them on. Some kids waved to their parents, but only briefly. It was an explicit instruction that they march straight and don't look or wave to the crowd. When Rudy's group came into the square and was instructed to halt, there was a discrepancy. Tommy Mueller. The rest of the regiment stopped marching, and Tommy plowed directly into the boy in front of him. Now what happens here is the boy gets a little angry, and Tommy comes back with a response. "I'm sorry," said Tommy, arms held apologetically out. His face tripped over itself. "I couldn't hear. It was only a small moment. but it was also a preview of troubles to come for Tommy, for Rudy. At the end of the marching, the Hitler Youth divisions were allowed to disperse. It would have been near impossible to keep them all together as the bonfire burned in their eyes and excited them. Now these kids, they began to be very excited and caught up in the moment of what's going on. And, everyone is kind of calling out to each other and celebrating in this moment in Germany, in the streets here. And this is a celebration at that time of Hitler's birthday. And, unfortunately, things would continue to spiral out of control for Germany, and many of these people would realize the atrocities the horrific things that were being done right under their noses as time went on. And unfortunately, some of them knew about it and did nothing to stop it or try to thwart it. But what's interesting here is that Liesl's character begins to see something happening. So I'm on page 109. By 4:30, the air had cooled considerably. People joked that they needed warming up. That's all this trash is good for anyway. Carts were used to wheel it in. It was dumped in the middle of the town square and doused with something sweet. Books and paper and other material would slide or tumble down only to be thrown back onto the pile. From further away, it looked like something volcanic, or something grotesque and alien that had somehow landed miraculously in the middle of town and needed to be snuffed out and fast. The applied smell leaned toward the crowd, who were kept at a good distance. There were well in excess of 1,000 people on the ground, on the town hall steps, on the roofs that surrounded the square. When Liesl tried to make her way through, a crackling sound prompted her to think that the fire had already begun. It hadn't. The sound was kinetic. Humans flowing, charging up. They've started without me. Although something inside told her that this was a crime, after all, her 3 books were the most precious items she owned, she was compelled to see the thing lit. She couldn't help it. I guess humans like to watch a little destruction. Sandcastles, House of Cards, that's where they begin. Their great skill is their capacity to escalate. The thought of missing it was eased when she found a gap in the bodies and was able to see the mound of guilt still intact. It was prodded and splashed, even spat on. It reminded her of an unpopular child, forlorn and bewildered, powerless to alter its fate. No one liked it. Head down, hands in pockets, forever. Amen. Bits and pieces continued falling to its sides as Liesl hunted for Rudy. When she looked up, the sky was crouching. A horizon of Nazi flags and uniforms rose upward, crippling her view every time she attempted to see over a smaller child's head. It was pointless. The crowd was itself. There was no swaying it, squeezing through, or reasoning with it. You breathed with it, and you sang its songs. You waited for its fire. Okay, so obviously this is a very chaotic time in the novel, and some things that you could be left wondering if you've just read this selection and nothing else. Does the narrator feel anything, right, when he performs his job throughout the story? And also, what is wrong with Tommy's ear? How did it become injured? Why will his hearing get Tommy and his friend Rudy in trouble later on? Is Liesl a good character? She certainly doesn't want to miss this book burning and support. So with this section alone, it's hard to imagine her as anything other than a supporter of these horrible things that are about to occur. Now, how does the narrator speak so dismissively of what is occurring? Does the narrator not understand the horror of what is about to happen? And so there are many other things that you would begin to wonder without well-developed background characters. And if you read the rest of the story, you would maybe be wondering if Liesl's father was really a coward. Why doesn't Rudy kiss Liesel when he has the chance? How does grief impact different people from different walks of life? In the story, many mothers lose their children and they grieve differently. So how does that add to our understanding of the impact of war? Finally, how can negative speech or hate speech get so far out of control that it can turn humans into the monsters that we read about in this novel? So, this week, I'm not going to spoil the ending for you. I'm going to recommend, though, that this summer you pick up a copy of The Book Thief and you read it from beginning to end. Now, not only is this a really developed commentary on what happened during the Holocaust, it is also an amazing example of how you can develop your characters in ways that teach people about your main character. Marcus Zusak does this, and he teaches us about who Liesel is, who she becomes, and how she discovers real courage during a tragic and violent moment in history. And there is no official assignment this week, guys. Just a reminder to treat your characters as though they are all human beings with complex personalities and emotions. Study your interactions with others. Use empathy, like we've talked about in previous lessons, to relate to friends and family. And that can help you see how there are often many more sides to the story than we know. And as writers, it's our job to show readers the messy truth of the characters we create. That is how you're going to keep them reading until the very last word. Okay, thank you guys so much for joining me this week. And again, if you need any kind of help, my email address is always in the comments and in the PowerPoint presentation. I do encourage you, turn in your work. Many of you have not turned in work, and unfortunately, if you don't get it in time, guys, it's not going to look so good for your grade, okay? So email me if you have questions. Join me for virtual office hours. I had someone join me last week. We got some things worked out for them. So you can always do those things. I'm here to help you. I want to see you succeed. Okay, thank you guys so much. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you during virtual office hour on Wednesday. Okay, bye guys.